Right, hi everyone, this is CamWeb Student Startups event, and today we have Alejandra here with us to talk about the Ethos network. And to start off the event, I'd first like to ask, could you explain to us more about what the Ethos network is and more about what your role there is as well?
For sure, yeah. Hi, thank you for the introduction. I can start a bit with what the company is. So I've got a bit of a cough. So Ethos is a social media startup building a mobile application for Gen Z, so 13 to 23-year-olds, to connect with causes that they care about. So for example, it's a place to find resources and solutions related to different social causes. The content is user and organization driven, and the platform has tools like fact checking to align the technology with the purpose of the app and the mission, which is to enable and facilitate engagement with causes, particularly for young people. So that's what the company is building. I founded the company in February 2020 out of a personal frustration. I felt like not enough resources were being pushed towards helping young people connect with causes that they care about, and that there's a lot of polarized discussions on the current platforms that actually could be avoided, or there's a lot more hand-holding that could be done when it came to this sort of engagement.
Thank you. I was going to ask for the motivation, but we've kind of covered that. So I think I'd move on to speaking more about kind of talking about how it is to kind of find resources for the Ethos network, and what the process is of kind of uploading stuff, since it's kind of a social media site, and what is involved in this, because it's hard to kind of find things and fact check everything.
Yeah, for sure. So I didn't have a background in coding or computer science, but I conceptualized it in January 2020, and I think the very first steps were to kind of think how the technology could best represent what we're trying to do. So a big part of that is, for example, the content recommendation algorithm. That's the first thing I started working on. And then also just wireframes of what the app would look like. Quite soon into that process, bought a domain as well. Quite soon into that process, I kind of realized we need people who actually have strong experience in coding to build that together. So I think the very first steps was setting up a WordPress website, getting the first bits of branding done, and basically trying to get enough materials to be able to bring other people on board with what you're doing. So yeah, that's how it went about.
Yeah. What was it like trying to gather people and get people involved? Were a lot of people willing to join, or did you find it was mainly students who are part of your team?
Yes, so at the start, I definitely started telling my friends. In a way, it's also market testing, because it was meant to be a product that would suit them as well. And they were definitely really supportive. All students as well at university. I'm 20 now, so I was 19 at the time, mostly first year students. And that was definitely a really good way to start kind of seeing how people would respond, different problems that could come up. Then after the first funding round, we were able to start recruiting people into the team full time. So the first person to join us full time was a lifelong friend of mine. I'd been working with her from the start in February, and then in August she was able to join us full time, and that's been really great to work with. And then since then we've been able to kind of get more proof of concept, and the team has been able to evolve into where it's at now.
Yeah, that sounds great. It must be really enjoyable. But talking about working with students, what is it like working with close friends? I guess is the process still quite rigid? You say the work environment's more comfortable, considering you've known each other as well since you've been lifelong friends?
Yeah, I think it's definitely really good in that sense. The exchange is just really easy, and we've really enjoyed it, particularly because we've been working remotely. So there's 6 of us in the company full time now, and other than Anna, who was the first person to join, we've not met each other face to face yet. So we're actually going to start working more from the office in September. But I think that's just a really big thing, to be able to kind of know people a bit more past just strictly the work you're doing. It really reflects. And then in terms of other students and friends we worked with. We early on as well, as I mentioned, kind of worked with students for different things like PR, marketing aspects, and that was really great. We worked with a variety of students, some as internships, others as like creative directors, and all our experiences there were really good. So I think there's definitely a lot of advantages, particularly for a company concept like this one that kind of resonates a lot with students anyway.
Yeah, definitely. So if you're speaking of like starting early 2020, and I guess speaking about how you've never met your teammates in person, what was it like during the pandemic, especially since like you were really early back then and you had to kind of like adjust pretty quickly?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had to do all the work remotely, so that was difficult. It's quite hard to build relationships, say, even just things like amongst other entrepreneurs, other people doing similar things. Events like that all shut down. So it was more like a matter of using blogs and yeah, your friends and things to push through. But it was good. Luckily, our concept, none of the work we were doing technically needs people to meet face to face. So we're just really lucky for that. And very early on in terms of development, we started with a development agency. Now the team's in-house, and I think that's definitely like a really good progression. But yeah, that's kind of how we went about it.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that answer. I was just going to ask, what other setbacks did you have to deal with and how did you respond to them during your time?
Yeah, I mean, there's all sorts that kind of comes up. I'll try and think of the least ethos specific one. I think at the beginning there's just huge amounts to do. So like I went from my pain point right at the start was frustration of like how the algorithms on the platforms people use now limit activism from
Yeah,
happening. And so from there it went into needing a product to that could do it better and so on. But then you've just got this really big thing going on, or like it seems it. And I think being able to break things down into smaller things that you can actually do, getting support from more people, like the support network, definitely fixes that a lot. The other thing is, which we've touched upon, is building the team.
yeah,
I think that's really key, and we're just so happy now to be in a place where we've got the team support, the advisory board, and we work closely with the chairman. And I think that really helps shape what you're doing.
yeah, definitely. What has just like interested in like more about the Ethos network, what has the engagement been like, and have you had like any feedback from students? And because of course it's a really helpful resource for them to use, so have you had any feedback on what has like what been like so far?
Yeah, so I just turn off. It's been great. So our journey was really to with the first round of funding, we launched a beta, a trial app that we really was just a proof of concept. We wanted to push something out there as quickly as we could, and the response to that was amazing. It basically gave us the traction and the momentum to be able to fully go back into just R&D and build the full product out. When we first launched, we received like really supportive comments from really different members. Our demographic
Yeah,
was like, we had people from the US, because we're based in London and launched primarily there, but the majority of all of our users were in the US, Australia, interestingly. And yeah, it was really great. We got people from all sorts of different sectors, jobs, all of them really young, just supportive, giving us feedback on how to iterate it. And we've been able to take that all into our product. So we constantly now run kind of testing sessions, which I think is such a good thing to do. Just get opinions from people if they'll give them to you. And that's like one of the most insightful processes we have in place building.
yeah, that sounds really good, honestly. I think talking or going back to kind of like the process, like developing the Ethos network, I think you just mentioned something about funding, and of course like funding can be like a really difficult thing to achieve. So I was just going to ask, like, how did you find like what was your process of getting funding, and did you find out that worked, or did you need to kind of like switch to an alternative method?
Yes, so yeah, fundraising takes so much time. But I think right at the beginning, it was just starting out thinking, okay, no funding is possible, and realizing actually it's the way to go, and just seeing how you can present what you've done in a way that fits in with like the world of kind of investors. So we've done 2 funding rounds to date, and we're in one now, a seed round, which is the growth round. And I think yeah, you definitely learn a lot from the process. It's a very different thing to kind of do compared to the like operational side of the company. And to start off with, we were able to contact someone who connects startups to investors. So we were actually really lucky in that process. One of the friends who I'd contacted knew someone who did that, and they were able to guide me through the process of creating an investment deck in the first place. When it comes to funding, I think the mentorship you can get from other entrepreneurs who've had to do the whole pitch deck thing before is everything. It's really valuable.
Yeah, so networking kind of sounds like a good thing to make use of.
In COVID is quite difficult because there are lots of events, and I would just see them just have been cancelled. So it's more difficult. I think LinkedIn is such a good tool for that. Just they're open to connections and like cold calling. So it's, in that sense, it's quite a good resource.
Yeah, definitely. So like moving on from funding, I think another resource that I guess you require in startup is time. So what was it like being a student and managing your time alongside your studies, and I guess this year as well, COVID?
Yeah, I mean, I did change universities after our first round of funding. I was at Oxford before, and I came to UCL, and it was quite optimistic about the pandemic, thinking because the team was based in London, I need to be there. But now it's happening, so I guess the choice was right. But yeah, so being based in London, I think helps a lot in terms of there's a view that I won't always have to do everything remotely. And to be honest, in the last year was quite an exception because everything was remote. I was able to really manage the time to work around the Ethos schedules.
Yeah.
So I really spend the semesters working on weekends on uni, and I'm just waiting to see really what it does this year. I think in terms of tips around that, it's definitely separating yourself is so good as well, because you suddenly realize something doesn't actually need, at least for me, sometimes it's like you can do 10 hours of work for something that could have taken 1. And I think the only way to really realize that is when you like take actual breaks. So yeah.
Yeah, no, that is very relatable. I was just going to ask more about, in terms like how, I guess you talk about separating yourself, I guess having a startup kind of separates yourself from others. So what would you say the benefits are? So like, let's say you're applying to like an internship, or someone's like overviewing your CV. What would you say the benefits are of having like a student startup as part of your application?
Yeah, it's difficult because I've not given applying to anything any thought.
Yeah.
I've just been completely hoping I'll be working on this for the next 10 years. But I think there's just one thing we definitely notice so much is just how much you learn. You just wear every hat until kind of you can bring someone in to support you on it. So all the way from, and everyone else in the team sees it as well, like what you do becomes a change. And because there's so many different things we have to cover, and there's 6 of us full time now. For a long time there was 3. You end up doing, in a single day, you could be going from like doing something to do with management, policy, legal, or like marketing.
Yeah.
So or design even, which I seem to do a lot of. So I just it really changes. So yeah, I think in terms of that sense, if I were to apply to a job, I think what the student startup gives you is like real hands-on experience across such a broader field than you would ever get, I think, in any internship in that kind of sense. And also speaking with people, recruitment processes, you learn a lot from, and things.
Yeah, Um, moving back to kind of like setbacks or anything specific to that, do you feel or do you think that you had or faced any gender specific setbacks, or do you feel like this was more something you didn't have to think about considering it was your own startup?
I think it definitely, I hadn't really been in the workplace before up until now, and I definitely feel I've seen gender specific, for example, setbacks manifest like across different industries. I mentioned that we've looked in different patterns in like marketing or investment or developers. So I think, for example, in coding, STEM, when we're recruiting, that's when I notice it the most, trying to find more women in coding. And one of the ways we've kind of tried to help with that in a way, or at least they're helping with it, is we found a really brilliant organization like called Code First Girls, and we were just trying to follow them, and they brought up the statistics even more of what we witnessed firsthand. So I think, yeah, you definitely in different ways see it. It's difficult for me personally to gauge as well, because I'm 20, so I think a lot of it could be age related. So some of the reactions, you don't really know where it's coming from. But my experience trying to recruit and pitching to different people, yeah, there's definitely things you witness that's different to the ones that you might see when you're studying or in different parts of.
Yeah, I think that answer will be very like helpful for our members. What would you say is the best way for our members to kind of like make use of the Ethos network, in terms of like how would you suggest they engage with the resource?
So we're launching in 2022. So I'd say to download it, and if they want to find, so there's different ways you can contribute. If you go on and you want to amplify content you're already creating, it's a great app for that, because the people will have joined will be looking for your content. But also if you want to discover whether it is just keep yourself up to date with particular topics in an overview way or in a more specific way, the posts, every user has the ability to get their post fact checked, which draws sources from the internet that essentially relate to what you're doing. The other way in which they can use it, of course, is to find like solutions. So the way our algorithm works is we try and make sure for every problem or awareness raising post you find, you're also suggested a solution, like petitions, fundraisers, or more creative campaigns in that sense. So yeah, hopefully there'll be something for everyone to use.
Yeah, definitely. I was just going to ask, like, what are some things the Ethos network has like done in the past? I understand like there was like COVID, so like just asking if there were any like small events or workshops or anything specific that you'd like to talk about.
In terms of events, sorry, I didn't hear it cut off.
Yeah, in terms of like events or anything, or like things you've uploaded that you'd like to speak about.
Yeah, I mean, we've our journey really was to get the proof of concept out in November, which now feels like so long ago. And since then, what we were able to do is just grow the team and like build the pipeline for things like cybersecurity, content moderation, fact checking, all of these considerations, as well as, of course, like the interface is just so much more tested and beautifully designed now by Tommy, who's our designer, and we are really excited by the features that are coming up. In terms of things that might resonate to students, I mean, I'm always happy, as I mentioned, I think some of the most useful tips I've had have come from other entrepreneurs, students, and also more experienced entrepreneurs. So I'd always be happy to chat to someone who had any thoughts, because I definitely think it's something that I've been lucky to benefit from so much. And I only really thought of reaching out to people quite late in the process. And then we're often recruiting. So we're always looking for people looking to join a startup. At the moment, we've got a very development heavy approach, but soon, like at the start of 2022, we're also looking at marketing, and we started that process. So yeah, that's essentially what we have in line at the moment.
Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. I think like just talking about recruitment and I guess that process of gaining more people in, what is your like recruitment process like? What do you kind of look like in candidates, kind of like see if they'll fit into the team?
So the majority of the recruiting we do, we put out posts on like job applications on LinkedIn and Indeed have been the two best ones for us, though we've tried more niche ones as well. And I think it's very, very specific to what we know needs to be done. So
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll have these amazing applicants and like really incredible, but we're like, actually we're not big enough for this to be what suits you. So like
Yeah.
very rarely would any of our roles be just strategy. It's also hands-on because we can't give people very big teams to work with. So I think our criteria is very tailored to the way that we know in a startup you have to wear lots of hats. For the recruitment itself, we run 2-stage processes, and past the first filter, we tend to just run it past the management team and the board for some of the appointments, and do interviews for the technical ones. They're a bit more technical. And I think for the creative ones, for example, portfolios are always the most useful thing. Other than CVs is something we've learned. But yeah, that's the process, and it's definitely really different depending on the role. I think we want to have like a recommendation from someone in the team, for example, because it's like just such a good reference. So when we can, we try and do it that way.
You know, that's really helpful. I think like just as like a final question, kind of like a summary of the session today, what would you say like your main tips are for students who are interested in looking for a startup or looking to start a startup, sorry?
I guess I'm speaking already just from like digital startup, so like the kind of fundraise, but if that's the case, I definitely think having a good idea of what you need to do. I think bringing people who are interested is on early is really, really valuable, like people who'll be really dedicated to it from right from the beginning. And yeah, just taking it bit by bit. So for us, the bit by bit meant we just tried to get even the most basic product out to prove the user interest. It could have been the other way, so a more developed product and not as much marketing. But I think that's the best way to go. And then that it does take time. I think when I first started, I thought you could turn things around in like the space of a few months and no budget, but it does take a lot of time. And it's difficult in COVID, but like networking events, particularly, there's a lot of events for women and non-binary people specifically. And I think being able to just attend those, I'm excited for them to start up again now that things are opening up.
Yep, no, that definitely sounds really good. Thank you so much. I just like to say thank you for coming and like speaking for us and like answering all these questions. I just know like it will be very useful for our members.
Thank you. No, yeah, thank you for having me. And yeah, let me know if you would like anything else.
Yeah, definitely. And I just like to say thank you to everyone like who's watched as well. I hope you enjoyed it.